everyone keeps talking about the opening ceremony.
Indeed.
It was spectacular, wonderful. We loved it.
But everyone probably has heard at least the controversy of the depiction of the Lord's Supper, Da Vinci's very, very famous painting of the Lord's Supper, but it was depicted by a bunch of cross-dressers and a large woman in the center.
If it's not the Lord's Supper, if it is this ancient Greek feast, how is that French?
Hello, and welcome to the Pop Culture Contrarian podcast with Thomas, Sterling, and Andrew.
Hello.
Hey there.
So today our title is Olympic Perversion and Mr. Beast. It's going to be a fun episode. We have a little bit of unclearness on how to handle some of these topics, so I'm going to let Thomas, who is more clear on this than I am.
Our resident Boogaloo sandwich.
Yeah. Which, I don't know what that is, actually.
You're wearing the Hawaiian shirt?
Oh, okay. You're referencing whatever the Boogaloo association is in your head, it's different than the Boogaloo association in my head.
Looks like we're really going to Boogaloo tonight, baby.
So Hawaiian shirt means Boogaloo to Andrew. I do know that.
Yep.
But to me, it just means when you have a sequel to something, you just name it something to Electric Boogaloo.
Lucifer 2, Electric Boogaloo.
I gotcha.
So, is it a good thing or a bad thing? Honestly, I'm confused.
It depends on who you ask.
Okay, well, moving on. So, the Olympics started, and everyone keeps talking about the opening ceremony.
Indeed.
It was spectacular, wonderful. We loved it.
Have you watched any of the Olympics?
I thought that the opening ceremony was a disgrace, actually.
It is the French.
Yeah.
It is the French, and I mean, they tried to go 100% secular back in their revolutionary days.
Maybe this is all moving too fast. Revolution should always be rushed.
Yeah, they did.
I'm proud to say my ancestors were kicked out before that happened. The French couldn't put up with
That's
the
right.
French.
You're like half French, right?
I my last name is French.
Yeah. So, I mean, you probably have a lot of opinions on this.
Well, my opinion
But it
is
has
the
nothing-
French,
yeah.
they lost all their talent when they kicked all the Huguenots out, which is what I am. So, sucks to be them.
Sucks to be
Yeah.
them.
So anyway, everyone, well, maybe not everyone, but everyone probably has heard at least the controversy of the depiction of the Lord's Supper, Da Vinci's very, very famous painting of the Lord's Supper, but it was depicted by a bunch of cross-dressers and a large woman in the center. And then eventually people are calling him the Smurf God. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's
Is it
supposed to be
like Bacchus?
He's supposed to be Dionysus or Bacchus. They're the same person.
Right,
And-
the god of drink or something.
yeah, the god of
fertility.
wine. And Dionysus does sometimes have blue skin in historical depictions.
Okay.
So that's why this guy has blue skin. But yeah, Smurf guy is what he looks like.
Yeah, and he was wearing almost nothing.
Almost nothing. People were talking about parts dropping out from behind the cover.
So
The Smurf. No.
yes, I know.
Yeah, well, now you're a Smurf.
And immediately what people saw and were offended by is that this was a mockery of the Last Supper. And
Because if you look at the images of the
Yeah.
Last Supper and this Olympic
Right.
opening, it's like, oh, clearly one is meant to imitate the other.
And, the woman who's in the Christ position. And
She's got a halo even.
yeah. Tweeted, yes, the New Gay Testament.
yeah,
So, I mean, now clearly, like, one individual actor is not necessarily going to have, like, the final say on what the director
On
intended.
the creative
you know,
direction. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
You can't deny that tweet was out by her and that it was deleted.
Yeah, so clearly,
Right.
at least this person thought that they were making fun of the Last Supper.
right. And that's the controversy that initially the authorities defended it as art and recognized it as being inspired by Da Vinci's painting.
Yeah.
And then they tried to gaslight the world and say, actually, no, that's not what we were doing. It's the Feast of the Gods. Has nothing to do with that painting. Even though, like you're saying, the large woman in the center with the halo, when she tweeted that, she also tweeted a picture of the Da Vinci painting
right underneath
and
it.
the snapshot from the ceremony directly above it, basically saying, hey, see the likeness here?
Yeah, the paintings they're saying they're trying to gaslight us into believing it was based on are, if you look at them, I've heard Feast of the Gods and
Yes.
Feast of Dionysus.
Okay.
In both of those, though, I believe, there's people on both sides of the table
Yes.
with their backs to the camera, as
Right.
it were. And in the the opening ceremony, everyone's on the one side of the table, just like in the famous painting, The Last Supper.
Yeah, and you're looking. I mean, the famous painting, Last Supper, you're looking at straight on. In the other paintings, the table is kind of falling off into the distance, and you're looking at it at an angle, and people on both sides, like you're saying, and they're clearly reveling or engaged in debauchery.
Essentially, a bunch of drag queens are dancing around behind a table.
Yeah.
And stuff.
Yeah. So anyway,
bearded ladies.
It was offensive, and it kind of shows, at least in my mind, I honestly haven't been excited to watch the Olympics, and as a result, I haven't actually watched any of it, which is kind of a shame because the athletes are amazing athletes.
Yeah, I do like to root for our athletes.
Or just even seeing the competition, the whole concept of the different countries competing against each other every 4 years with these specialty events is interesting, and it is something that has brought the world together, and I think on the whole has been a good thing. But it's sad to see the continued, what I would call degradation of the West into this pagan perversion, basically, where it's basically throwing off. And when you mock something, you're mocking it because you're rejecting it, basically, for the most part.
And, on the point of these are supposed to be like a unification of humanity, and also it's supposed to be a point of celebration for the host country of their culture. It confused me so much that this would be the centerpiece.
Yeah.
Because, okay, yes, there were French things. There was Marie Antoinette was depicted at one point.
But headless.
Well,
she was famously decapitated.
She was, but it was a little grotesque.
Yeah, for sure.
And there were other things that are fairly French, like a menage a trois.
Which is, again, perversion.
Yeah. And maybe potentially the most noble, allegedly, a depiction of Joan of Arc.
Allegedly, but other people made other claims about what it looked like to them.
I know.
It looks like a pale rider on a pale horse, which if that phrase doesn't ring a bell, then read Revelation again.
No kidding. But to my point, I remember as a kid growing up, we always loved watching the Olympics. My dad's
the opening ceremonies.
The ceremony, it was like a really big deal in our household to watch the opening ceremonies. And I remember watching Sydney, Australia, and how awesome that was. And one year in London and Tokyo and all of the different places that have just had really amazing ceremonies. And you just look forward to seeing these beautiful and inspiring depictions of the culture.
Right. Yeah.
And particularly I remember Sydney and how beautiful it was. And, they've ended it by singing Waltzing Matilda. And it's and the lead was a child, and it was just a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder, where did they get the idea that if it's not the Lord's Supper, if it is this ancient Greek feast, how is that French?
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe the artist was French. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that the artist was French, Thomas Joly. But
well, just if I can interject real quick, as you were saying, all these Olympic ceremonies, they're supposed to be beautiful, gorgeous exhibitions of this is our creativity shown to the world. This is the best we can offer. And that's not the best France can offer, or at least it didn't used to be.
No.
Yeah.
I don't personally think many people find drag queens inspiring. Maybe other drag queens do.
I am a drag queen. No.
But I don't find them inspiring. I find them kind of revolting, honestly.
No, I think that it's kind of like, it's a celebration of deviancy.
Yeah.
Just be straight up.
Maybe that is French.
And I mean, it's sad that is basically heralded as progressive, as forward thinking, as cultural development. And I agree with a lot of people that say it's actually regressive because you're going into and you're celebrating the most debased aspects of human expression, and that you don't want to do it. And the manner in which they did it by mocking, the Last Supper. But ironically, this is the last thing that comes to my mind with that. The reason Jesus came and had to die is because that's what we are like. We're these debased sinners that unless he saves us, this is what we turn into.
Yeah.
So anyway, So it got off to a rockin' start. I did see the one thing, and it was just a photo, but it was really cool. I would have to say one of the coolest photos I have seen of the opening ceremonies was, I'm not sure how they did it, but it's the colored smoke above the Seine in the French flag.
That is cool.
That was I don't know how they got that to look like that, but that was really cool looking. So on that, I would say I'd give them a thumbs up on that one.
Yeah.
As far as this Olympics has gone, I think it's been pretty, I know to Sterling's chagrin, the U.S. is behind in the gold medal count compared to what? They're number 5?
Yeah, I think we're in 5th place in gold medal count
as of today, or the last time you checked.
I can pull it up right this minute.
There have been some exciting golds, though.
Yes, there have been.
One in particular was the first gold for the men's swimming relay, and then the first men's gymnastic pommel in 16 years.
Yeah, and that kind of has made some waves because the men's gymnastics team hasn't medaled in a very long time, 16 years, as you said. And they had, I think, 5 members of the team. And 4 members did pretty much all the events. And they kept cutting to the 5th member of the team, who's just sitting there with his glasses on. He looks kind of nerdy, doing a Rubik's Cube or something, falling asleep. He's just like not even really present for most of the day where they're competing. Because they brought him for one event, because he's the master of the pommel horse.
Oh, really?
So at the end, they finally send him up to do that. He takes his glasses off, so people are calling him Clark Kent, because he goes from nerd to master of the pommel horse. Takes his glasses off, does a great routine, and gets them the medal.
That's awesome.
And it's just, the internet loves this guy now, because he was just kind of sitting there. And then he was like, he actually is really a really cool athlete.
Yeah, and it's in there. That's what we love about the Olympics too, is inspiring stories like that. I mean, to see and learn about the background of a lot of these athletes. A lot of them have come, struggled to get where they are. I mean, just to take your talent and then to be disciplined enough to hone it to such high levels to compete against world athletes. That's impressive. And I think there's some really cool stories. There always are really inspiring stories behind these competitions. So
I will also say that the Celine Dion song was actually very inspiring.
Yeah.
Based on what she deals with physically, and never knew if she would be able to sing again. She sang on top of the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah, that's cool.
And she didn't skip a beat, and she has a debilitating disease that causes like seizures, and it's very awful.
Yeah, it's Stone Man. I think.
So just a positive aside.
Yeah.
At least. And there are positives.
There's always positives, because I mean, this is a collection of some of the world's greatest talent at all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And that's always really cool to see someone who's, especially if you win a gold medal, you're probably the best in the world at that time, at that sport, whatever it is. And that's really cool to know you're number 1 worldwide.
Speaking about number 1 worldwide, go ahead and like and subscribe and make us number 1 worldwide for
podcasts
for a split
Joe
second.
Rogan, we're coming for you.
Yeah, actually, it's now Tucker Carlson.
Is it really?
Yeah, he surpassed Joe Rogan.
All right.
Really?
Well, Tucker, you know what? We got to sit down.
I guess we got to start talking about aliens.
Yeah.
Yep. Anyways, like, subscribe, ring that bell notification. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen, leave us a review. Let us know what you think. But back to you, Sterling.
Yeah. Well, just on the talk about aliens thing, we have been told in-house a note, I wish you'd talk more about conspiracy theories. So, I'm on board.
You never know.
Yes. So, speaking of conspiracy theories, actually,
Dwight, not everything is a conspiracy theory.
this takes us to the next topic. With the Olympics, it has become controversial. And I think people are jumping on a little too fast, not knowing the full story. But this has to do with women's boxing, where an Italian boxer went up against an Algerian boxer and quit
within 46 seconds.
46 seconds, quit after getting punched in the face a couple times. The controversy is the Algerian boxer actually a female?
Yeah.
Now, for background, so because of in the West, and we've talked about it numerous times on our program, the issue of the culture of the gender benders or transgenderism, right? Where people are just, you are what you say you are, and no one's allowed to question it.
I think just before we get to that, I'll let you continue. The reason this is even a question is because previously this boxer was denied entry to another boxing event because of failing some gender test that's not really been revealed.
Right. So this boxer who is Iman, I think.
Iman Khalif, however you're supposed to say
is
it.
Algerian. I'm going to call her she because there's nothing right now that I can know for certain what her gender is. So I'm just going to call her she.
As far as we know, she was born
As
female.
far as we know, she was born female.
Yeah.
The controversy, though, is that she's 25. She's been boxing since 2018. She's not professional. This is an amateur boxer. But she's been competing in several different boxing events since then. And in the 2023
the IBA
championships, she was disqualified. And the reason she was disqualified is they said she had too much testosterone in her system.
And allegedly XY chromosomes.
And then they tested her and they said she had XY chromosomes.
But this isn't from an official finding that we know this information. So that's why we're kind of...
Right. So the IBA, their rule is that this disqualified her, so she was done. When it comes to the Olympics, I'm not really... They've not been very clear as to exactly how they make their decisions, but they gave her the green light and she was allowed to compete. So because of that and because of this match where the Italian was done in 46 seconds and she was very emotional at the end of it. And part of that emotion, to be honest, is that her father passed away and she was fighting for him. And so you can understand.
She said she didn't go the last kilometer.
Yeah.
That
which is, he had always told her to fight to the end or something like this. Anyway, so there's controversy surrounding, is this person who they think they are? We don't know. But also there seems to be, because of what we're going through in the West and our current culture with the transgender stuff, people have jumped on board and they're just piling on saying, how dare this happen? This is an example of why men and women shouldn't be fighting or playing against each other, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, people are asserting that Imani is a man, is transgender. We don't know. We don't have that information.
All the South Park prophecies are coming out.
Yeah.
Right.
Elon's talking about it.
And I've seen, I think I saw on X, there was a juxtaposition of the fight and that South Park episode. Yeah. The one thing to note is in Algeria, it's illegal to be transgender, based on the Western view. So either this person grew up lying their entire life and their family lying about them, or something happened to them when they were young and we don't know, or they're what's classified as intersex, and that's a whole can of worms. But
the point is, we don't really know.
No, so I think people just need to kind of cool their jets, and try to understand that this is not a cut and dried system of somebody just a man saying, you know what, I feel like I'm a woman today.
Right, and people are understandably firing their jets pretty quickly because that is happening a lot
in the States,
in other cases in the U.S. in Europe, it's happening where men are saying, I'm a woman now, and then I'm going to compete, and I'm going to beat him. Leah Thomas is probably the most famous.
Yeah. Sure, and that explains the jump into conclusions.
Yeah.
And that's understandable. But sometimes things are not quite so cut and dry.
Right.
It's not. So this is one of those things where as Christians, we can be like, okay, we need to have some grace here and just say, and honesty and humility, we don't really know. We don't. And it's an unfortunate situation. But this, I don't think, is indicative of what we were seeing at the Olympic ceremony, opening ceremony, and criticism we have there. I don't think this is, because people are trying to make that connection. And
I think this is just a separate event, and we don't know what the truth of it is.
Yeah. Yep. So, anything more on the Olympics, either of you guys?
Just the reason. So one of my favorite things to do at the Olympics is I just keep a tab open that's Olympic medal count, and so. Every time U.S. wins a gold, especially, I'll go and I'll watch the highlights of, whatever sport it was, because I don't have time to watch every Olympic event because there's so many of them. But my entire lifetime, with almost no exceptions, the U.S. has dominated from minute one the gold medal count. I think the only time we officially lost was in Beijing when the Chinese won, and we came in second. But every other time, my entire lifetime, since 96 would have been my first Olympics, but I was 2 years old. Anyhow, we've dominated, and this time we're in fifth. And it's been a few days already, and it's like, wow, what's happening? And we're winning lots of medals. It's just mostly silvers and bronzes.
Do you think that it's going to end up, or are we going to be at top at the end? What do you think?
I think we'll probably be first or second by the end, but I've never seen in 2012, 16, 21. I never really saw us fall this far behind this quickly. So I'm a little bit disappointed by that, but
Yeah. I mean, it is true that there are some changes of events that are actually done at the different games, correct?
I guess so. I don't really know how that works, but I'm sure they're not always the same order. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think there are also certain games that, depending on the country, are kind of entered or highlighted that aren't necessarily going to be in every single Olympics games.
I think what also might be happening is the Russians aren't competing at all this time. In the past, they weren't allowed to compete, but they sent people under some other group that were allowed to compete.
Yeah, the Federation.
Yeah. But this time they're not competing at all. So I think what might be happening is a lot of golds that we assume are going to go to the Russians are going to other people. And so it's making the U.S. fall farther behind. That's just my speculation.
That's interesting. That's an interesting take. Yeah. And when does it's got another week?
I think another 2 weeks. When did the Olympics start? I think it started
on Sunday, right?
Yeah. So I think it's 3 weeks.
Okay.
Let's get that number. But we have another thing that we're going to be talking about here as well.
So our next topic is one that's kind of been blowing up on the internet over the last week, or actually a little bit longer.
Yeah. You wrote a column about this.
I did. Mr. Beast. Yeah. His now fired sidekick and longtime friend, Chris Tyson.
Yeah.
Ava Tyson, I guess is his
real name. Yeah. Because this guy is transgender.
Here is a man who decided he was a woman.
Yeah.
That's basically.
For reference, the Olympics ends on the 11th. Today, while we're recording, is the first.
Yeah. Okay. And there's been controversy because last year, Tyson announced that he was transitioning and no longer a man and now a woman and all this stuff. Well, as is often the case with this, I don't know what term I want to use here. This condition issue. There tends to be other things behind the scenes that would motivate somebody to do this.
Right.
Yeah. And it seems like we're starting to see some of these other things behind the scenes.
Yeah. You might say wanting to transition in the first place is a pretty big red flag.
Yes.
Especially on mental health.
Yes. But evidently, Tyson was engaged in inappropriate online behavior with minors. That's a good way to put it. The question is, and it's been pretty conclusive, so he got fired. So Mr. Beast issued a statement saying that he is no longer employed and they're investigating it further. But now there's more people trying to come out and saying, we think that more people knew what was going on and have known what was going on for a long time.
Because these messages were online on Discord, which is it's a big group chat, basically. So there were more people who could see what was happening. But, it's like someone who uses Discord, it's very possible that two people, even in a big group Discord, could be having a conversation that no one else is really paying attention to. That happens all the time.
Yeah.
So, it could be that nobody noticed. It could be that there are other people who knew this was happening. Both of those are very plausible.
It seems like there's enough victims that some coming forward, others have said they're not a victim. But I think the one who said he's not now is saying, well, maybe he was. I don't know for sure. But there's multiple people evidently, and the
age gap was like 7 years from 20 to 13. So it was not borderline where it was an 18 and a 17-year-old. It's not like that.
Right. So that now there's former employees of Mr. Beast.
Do you guys have YouTube, and have you seen the new Mr. Beast video where he makes the world's largest elephant's toothpaste?
Mr. Beast, what maybe still is the biggest YouTube channel out there. I mean, I think I read his annual revenue is something like $700 million.
Yeah, he's one of the biggest household names on the internet, basically, from the internet. And he's even said, if they lowered the age limits, I'd run for president. So this is a guy who's got pretty big name recognition, especially with young people. He's a superstar in his industry.
Yeah, and he tends to be seen as pretty wholesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's altruistic.
He's done things like wells,
built wells in Africa. He got flack for that, of all things.
Wells and houses.
Yeah, right.
And he's given people houses and cars and all manner of things.
Yeah, that's what most of his videos are. It's some kind of competition,
giving stuff away,
where you're competing for $100,000, $1 million, however much. There's one, where he gets one person from every age, from age 1 to age 100. Puts them in a room with a bed and says, the last person standing gets $1 million. And so,
there was one that I really particularly loved where it was one of his earlier videos where they opened up a free car dealership and people came by and they thought it was a regular car dealership. People just needing to buy a car.
Yeah.
And so the guy comes in and it's like, oh yeah, I like the car, whatever. And they're like, all right, we want to sell it to you for free. And they're like, what? It's like, all right, you drive a tough bargain. free plus $500. We'll pay you $500 for you to have this car. And stuff like that. It was hilarious. Yeah. And people were crying and stuff like, you don't know how much I needed this. And so, stuff like that's pretty common.
Yeah, he does that kind of stuff. And he also does some more absurd stuff where he like gave his buddy a house he had to live in for a month. But then he would come in and like cut half of the house off. And so now the guy's living in half of a house and it's raining and he's like trying to stay dry. So it's pretty funny stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, so there's that controversy. And now there's controversy from former employees trying to come out and saying some of these claiming some of these competitions were actually rigged. They weren't all on the up and up. They changed the rules somehow midway through the game, which shouldn't have been legal, all kinds of things.
Yeah.
So there's it's not surprising, honestly, when you get this big, there's going to be detractors always. It doesn't matter who you are. But there does seem to be at least some of these accusations. There does seem to be some evidence that could support them. Some of it just being that they've taken some of these videos down that are being challenged. So even that doesn't necessitate guilt, but it does kind of give you this sense of like, maybe they weren't fully on the up and up on some of these.
Yeah.
Anyway, Mr. Beast, Mr. Beast is, going through probably not a great time right now. I don't know how much it's going to impact his bottom line or his channel in the long run.
Yeah. I mean, my guess would be it's unless he himself, Mr. Beast, gets caught up in some of these sexual stuff, then I think he's probably going to do just fine going forward.
Right. I agree with you. Unless something comes out and that's part of the thing where, well, how much did he actually know? Because this was his best friend and they were always chumming around, doing all kinds of stuff together, goofing off like this. How much does he really know? And did he participate in any of this? That's the question. I don't know that there's been any actually evidence to come out to suggest he does, but.
Right. Well, the contention from a lot of the same people who are really going too fast on this boxing thing has been basically, well, you knew when this guy went transgender. And I agree, it's a big red flag. You know something's not right with this guy. That's what I think. But obviously not everyone who identifies as transgender, and not even most, I would hope, are pedophiles.
Right.
No. And even the term, I don't know if it's even appropriate to say that he was necessarily a pedophile, but there is something that somehow by him engaging in sexual conversation with young people, somehow evidently he enjoyed that. I do think there's an element in which we've talked about this before. There's one of the elements of this, and I think especially with guys, is sexual gratification element too.
Yeah.
But we probably should stop there.
Yeah.
Anyway, was there anything else that we wanted to talk about, or
I think that's our topics.
Kind of like we hit them all.
Yeah. There's some Marvel news happening, but maybe we'll pop that
Save
into
that for another episode.
Its own episode. Yeah.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, this has been the Pop Culture Contrarian podcast with Thomas, Sterling, and Andrew. We're brought to you by the Patriot Post, which is the oldest conservative news digest on the web. It's right and it's free. Be sure to like and subscribe both to it and to us, the Pop Culture Contrarians. And we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
See you guys.